On July 13, 2012, I posted my very first tutorial showing you how to turn someone into a zombie in Photoshop CS6. Photoshop has come a long way since then, and with Halloween just around the corner, I wanted to show you how to recreate that effect using the latest tools in Photoshop. Before we start, make sure you're working with the latest Photoshop beta, version 26.1. This is the image that we're going to work with, and let's start by generating some assets. Go into Edit and choose Generative Workspace. From here, we're going to take advantage of the reference feature. There's two types of reference, composition reference and style reference. We're going to use the composition reference in this tutorial. To do so, simply click on Upload Image, select the same image that you're working with, and click on Open. This reference image will make it so that your generation matches the outline and depth of your image. For a closer match, make sure that you use a strength of 75. Then I'm going to type the prompt. Zombie growling with showing bones and damaged skin wearing a gray ripped t-shirt shot on a solid gray background. This is to try to match the original image as best as possible. Then from the effects button, choose themes and click on cinematic to generate a cinematic effect. And I'm going to change the aspect ratio to 4:3 to better match my image. Then I'll click the generate button. And in just a few seconds, Photoshop is going to give us 4 variations based on our prompt and settings. This is a lot easier than finding stock images. All the generations will match the face you're working with, and you can choose multiple variations and use traditional Photoshop tools and techniques to combine them into your composite. From the results, I like the cheek on this one. So why don't we start compositing with this image? Click on the Add To button on the top right. Then from this window, choose where to save this document. This dropdown will have all your currently open documents. I'll choose my zombie PSD and I'll save it as separate layers. Then click the Add button and your generation will appear in Photoshop. Since I chose the original image as a reference image, look how well the zombie image matches the background. It's fantastic. So you can see the before and after here is pretty good. All I'm going to do now is simply hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click on the layer mask icon to create a black mask, which will hide everything. And I'm going to bring back the areas that I want to use from this image by using the brush tool and making sure that white is my foreground color and painting with white on the layer mask. So now when I paint with white on the layer mask, I start bringing back some of that detail. I have a soft brush at the moment, which is not what I want, so I'm going to increase the hardness by dragging the hardness slider. You can of course also use the keyboard shortcut, Shift right bracket key to make the brush harder, Shift left bracket key to make the brush softer. Notice the icon here, how it changes as I use that keyboard shortcut, so you can determine how soft or how hard the brush is. And just continue painting until you reveal the detail that you want. And as you start painting detail in, you might realize that you painted too much. So make your foreground color black by tapping the X key. Then make the brush softer by holding Shift and tapping on the left bracket key. And continue painting on these edges to soften them up. I'm not liking the highlight here on the right, so I'm going to remove that from the image. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, hit like now and subscribe. Let's now generate a few more assets. Go back into Edit, choose Generative Workspace, and we can generate a few more of these. I'll click on Generate once again just to get 4 additional variations. And while that generates, I'm also going to generate something new. I'll use the prompt, a dirty and damaged skull. Then I'll click Generate. While that generates, I'm going to look at my 4 new variations. And I decided to generate gray shirts in case I needed to replace the shirt my character is wearing. And I just got my 4 other generations. Here they are. I'm looking for images that could work for what I have in mind. I want his skull peeking through. This area could work well. This image is a little too blurry, but you know what? One of the things you might want to do is experiment. So I'm going to experiment without the cinematic effect. And I'm also going to go into Effects, and under Content Type, I'll choose Photo. So a dirty and damaged skull is what I want, and I'll click on Generate. And sometimes you may need to generate a few times to get the result that you want. In this case, it did a really good job. This looks really good. I could probably use this part of the image. This one looks even more gory, not so realistic. And this skull actually has dirt on it, and I don't think it'll work. So I'm just gonna stick with this one, and I can probably use this left-hand side of the image for my design. So I'm gonna click on Add To, choose your working document, and separate layers. Then click Add. There it is. I'll do exactly the same thing. I'll hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click on the layer mask icon to create a black mask. Then with the brush tool, paint with white to bring back the pixels of that image. This particular skull had hair and it kind of matches the image pretty good. Maybe I can completely remove the eye in this case, like so. And obviously I'm gonna have to fine tune all this later, but this is looking fantastic. And if you add too much in, you can tap on the X key to make the foreground color black and paint away those areas. And you can tap X again to make the foreground color white and continue painting in the skull over the face. I'm gonna continue painting over the face, go past the hairline. Luckily this skull has hair, so it blends in nicely. If you want to check your mask, you can always hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click on the layer mask thumbnail to see the areas that you painted over, and I'm just gonna paint these areas white to completely reveal the skull over those areas. The next thing that I'll do is double click to the side of the layer to bring up the layer style window. And from here, I'm going to use the blend diff sliders to bring in some of the shadows from the background image above the skull. I think that will make it look more realistic. So from the underlying layer settings, I'm gonna drag the black point to the right and notice how those shadows come in. Obviously this adjustment is too harsh, so I'll hold Alt and click on this point to split it in half and create a smooth transition between those pixels. Notice how good the hair looks over the skull now. I think it looks fantastic, and it helps some of the original details pop back in, like the line here on the brow. I'll press OK, and we'll continue making some adjustments. This time I'm gonna go back into the layer mask. Tap X to make the foreground color black, and paint away the dark areas here. Create a smooth transition with a soft brush, like so. Next, let's work on the original background image. If you notice, it doesn't have as much contrast as the generated images, so we need to make them match. To do so, select the background, then go into the new adjustment layer icon and choose Curves. Then create an S-curve, which means that you click and drag down on the shadows to make them darker, and you click and drag up on the highlights to make them brighter. This curve adds contrast and it looks like an S. Also, every time you apply a curves adjustment, you inadvertently increase saturation, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to change the blending mode from normal to luminosity. See that? Notice that with normal, we added saturation as well as contrast, and with luminosity, we just keep the contrast and not the added saturation. And I think this looks fantastic. And now I can fine tune the curves adjustment layer even more. Here's the trick for you. When you have a point selected, you can simply tap on the plus key to go up and select the point on top, then use the arrow keys to increase the highlights. I'm gonna go back down by pressing the minus key, and now press the down arrow key to make the shadows darker. Another issue that we have is that his skin tones are quite good, but we want to make them feel more dead. So to do that, I'm gonna select the background. Then from the new adjustment layer icon, I'll create a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Then with this icon, I'm gonna click over the skin so it selects the appropriate colors, and of course that's red. And I'm just going to decrease saturation and shift the hues to make the skin tones feel greener. I think I need to reduce the saturation a bit more. Now that we're playing around with colors, what I'm gonna do is go back into the generated 2 image, which is this skull here. And I wanna make sure that the bone feels more like bone. It doesn't at the moment. And to do so, I'm gonna use a very similar technique. I'm going to create a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Click on this icon to clip it to the layer below, which means that this adjustment layer will only affect the skull layer. Decrease the saturation and adjust the hue to make it feel more like bone. That looks pretty good. By the way, let me know in the comments what you're dressing up as for Halloween. I don't think I need to tell you what this costume is all about, but fun fact, Back to the Future is the movie that I've seen the most times. Next, I'm gonna go back into our first generated image, and I think I'm gonna bring back some of the pixels in that area because I think it'll help us blend the images better. And I'm gonna do what I did before. I'm gonna double click to the side of the layer here and bring up the shadows from the underlying layer just in case. This looks pretty good. I'll press OK. And on the layer mask, I'll paint with black just to remove those imperfections. I'm not liking the left eye, so I think an empty socket would be better. I'm just gonna quickly hack that by creating a new layer and simply painting with black with a soft brush like I'm doing here. This is going to be a dark image. We won't need a lot of detail, so I think we'll be able to get away with just simply painting with black. And I think this looks pretty good. Simple but effective. Let's now work on the other eye. I'm not really liking what I see here, so what I'm gonna do is select the selection brush, reduce my brush size by tapping on the left bracket key and just paint over the eye like so. Under Generative Fill, I'll use the prompt, Evil Eye, and I'll hit Generate. And hopefully we'll get some variations that'll create some pretty creepy zombie eyes. They all look pretty good, but I think this is the one that looks more zombie-like, so that's the one that I'll keep. Next, I'm gonna go back into the Generative Workspace, and we're gonna generate one more texture for the top of the face. I'll use to prompt a dirty and damaged skull with skin and hair. Then I'll tap enter to generate. And these are my results. Let's check them out. They're not quite what I was looking for, but maybe I can make one of these work. I think I can make the third one work, so I'll take it into Photoshop. You know the drill? And although the image is not exactly what I want, generating assets for this project is much easier than sorting through thousands of stock photos like I did in the original tutorial back in 2012. And by the way, if you've seen the original zombie tutorial, let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching for over 10 years. And again, I'm going to hold Alt and click on the layer mask icon to create a black mask that hides everything. And I can paint with white to reveal the contents of this layer. This generated image is going to help us create the illusion that the skin is breaking, and I think it's going to do a much better job on the edges than simply painting with a soft brush. And for the sake of time, I'll pause the video, continue working on the mask, and I'll be right back. And this is my result after masking for a few moments. Next, I'll go back into the Generative Workspace to generate one more asset to finish up my design. And I want to create more generations with skulls. I think that this will give me the bad teeth that I'm looking for. So I'll click on the Use All Settings button so that all the settings from this generation are applied to the Generative Workspace, and now I can just click on Generate. And hopefully the next generations will have the teeth that I'm looking for. And the results should be coming up in just a moment. I'll scroll to the right, have to do it one more time, and there they are. I'll click through the results to see what works. The teeth are just too perfect in all these generations. I'm just gonna stick with this and then use Photoshop to make them look worse. I'm gonna go back into Add To and choose my zombie PSD. And again, I'll make a black layer mask and paint with white on the mask to bring in the zombie teeth. And I'll spend some time trying to blend it in so that it all looks realistic. And by the way, as I'm painting, I'm reducing my brush size by tapping on the left bracket key to get a small brush and get the details right on the mouth. What I can do now is take any one of these images, like the skull here, and duplicate it by pressing Ctrl J and deleting the layer mask. Remove the underlying layer adjustment, like so, and putting this way on top. You can click and drag it up like so, or the keyboard shortcut is Ctrl Shift right bracket key, which pushes that layer to the top of the layer stack. And what I want is this dirty texture over his teeth, and I'll use the soft light blending mode to mix it with the teeth to make him seem stained and dirty. And once again, I'll hold Alt and click on the layer mask icon to create a black mask, and I'll paint with white over his teeth to bring back the stains. I definitely don't want them to look perfect. Next, I'll make the teeth look broken by creating a new layer and choosing the clone stamp tool from the toolbar. I'll hold Alt and sample from inside his mouth, and I'll paint to make it seem like its teeth are cracked. This zombie has been eating a lot of brains and his teeth are breaking. And I think this looks pretty good. For the purposes of time, I'm not going to worry about his neck or his shirt, but I would basically do exactly the same process, generate an image and put them all together in Photoshop. To finalize my image, I'm going to select the layer on top, hold Shift, and hold the layer at the very bottom, right click, and convert it into a smart object. What I'm going to do now is go into Filter, Camera Raw Filter. From here, I'm going to apply some filters to make this even spookier. First, I'll increase the contrast, bring down the highlights a little bit, and make the image a little bit darker. Then, under Color, I'm going to increase the vibrance just a little bit. Under Effects, I'll add Texture and Clarity, which makes it more grungy. I'll add a vignette to darken the edges. And from the color grading, I'm going to click on this icon to apply a global blue tint to the image. Maybe not so intense, just a hint of blue, and I think that looks much, much better. This is without it, and this is with it. I think it just helps it feel more like a horror movie, which is exactly what I want. And I'll press OK. And I'll click on the eye icon so you can see the before and the after. Since this is a smart object, I can always double click on it to open it, and all my layers are still here. If I make an adjustment, save the layer, and go back into my working document, those changes will be applied. And if you made it this far, hit the like button now and subscribe. Happy Halloween, and thank you for watching.